Hey everyone, welcome back to Coding Journey with Akash. In this video, we'll be solving another React machine coding question. So the output will look something like this. It's a little bit advanced question in which we have to create a lighter version, we can say, of MS Excel, in which you have to create such grid type structure and you have to add the functionality for adding row, for adding column, and you have to add any one implementation of MS Excel. Like let's suppose if we will type a query, such type of query like equals to 9 plus 9, and when we blur, basically move away from it, something like this, or click on any other, which is a blur functionality, which you all know. So it should give the result like it gave 18. Okay. So this is the kind of a functionality that we need to create. And if the interview wants to, modify this particular question, then what they can do is they can simply add the button. They can ask you to add the button to remove row, to remove the column as well, and to mimic some other functionality. But for this particular video, we can try like adding these functionalities. So let's begin. Okay, so first of all, let's understand how we can create this. So this is a grid, which means we can, for now, what we can do, if we think about a brute force approach, we can create a two-dimensional array in JavaScript. So what do we understand by two-dimensional array? Let's have a look. So it's something like this. We all must have used 2D array while we were coding. Okay, so अगर हम JS की बात करें, so in JS it's something we can create is array of array. ठीक है, so this is what we can create. Okay, so you can think of this particular thing in terms of this 2D array. ठीक है, so this particular grid we can say कि जो ये वाला one है, that is that particular input box. Similarly this one is that second input box, and this is the third, this is the fourth. ठीक है, so if you want to access like let's suppose we are writing on this second input box, ठीक है, and we want to access its value. So what we can do is, let's suppose this is our array, so we can say array at row, okay, and at column, which means array at row is 0, okay, and column is 1, like column is also 0, so 0 0, so a at 0 0, something like this. Okay, so let's start coding. So we are not going to, let's first remove this code that we don't need. We also don't need this piece of code, so let's remove this as well. Cool. Now let's start coding. So as I've already shown you that this is something that we are going to create. So for this, first let's create two state, one for row, one for column, and one for grid. So let's first import the use state. Now let's create the state. Initially, let's give it a value of 2. And similarly to the columns, also we are going to give it a value of 2 only. For now, we are creating the grid of 2 by 2. Okay, so here let's have set grid. And for creating a grid, what we can do, we can create a function like create grid, and this will take row and column. Okay, so for now let's give it like hello world, something like this, and let's wrap it in some sort of tool. Create grid is not defined. Okay, so let's create this function. Rows comma column. So now let's first have one like outer array, because in JavaScript we are going to create it as a array of array. Now let's run a loop. So this is the outer loop. Now we are going to run another loop, that will be the inner loop. So let's simply copy this, and we are going to create array of arrays. So for that we also need one inner array, that will be like, let's say row empty array. Cool. Now what we can do, we can simply do row. For now we can simply push like anything, like for example empty string I am pushing over here, and once this loop is over, we can finally push this particular like array into this outer array. over here row. And finally we also need to return this particular data so that it is stored into our state that we have created. Cool. Now let's have a look at it. Let's console.log the grid. Okay, console.log. Okay, console, something like this. Cool. So let's have a look at the console. Cool friends, we are getting this array of array, and the initial value, like the default value we have given is like empty string for now. So cool, we have created the grid successfully. There is one more thing that I want to show you. Like in JS, you can also do it like this as well. If you want to do it in one line. So this is the thing for, this is the code for that, in which what you can do is you can simply create a new array and of a length of rows, that is 2. Then we can fill it with like some empty string in order to run a loop, and after that each time we are running loop we can again create a new array. Basically you can think of it as like this is the first loop, this is the second loop in terms of rows, and for that we are creating a new array. Okay, and we are creating like it of a size of 2, that is column, and we are filling it with empty string. So this is the first row, and for the first row what we did, we created an array and filled it with empty string 2 times, and similarly this is the second row. Okay, and we created a new array and filled it with like empty string. Let's go with the old school approach only for now. Cool. So what else we can do now? So now as we have seen over here, there is a functionality for like to add the row and to add the column. So let's quickly create a function for these two. So in add rows, what we are going to do is we are simply going to update our row first of all, like initially rows plus 1, and simply what we are going to do, we are also going to update the grid as well, like set grid, and we simply need to pass over here row plus 1 comma calls. Okay, because yes, I think it should work. And also what we can do is similarly we can create a function to add the column. Calls over here, we are not going to increment the row, we are going to increment the 1. Cool. So these are the two helper functions that we have created. Now what else? What else can we create? So we can also create the handle value change for, like for example, whatever we are typing in this, it should get, it should be bind to that particular state only, like for that particular state that is corresponding to this particular input box inside our grid. So let's see how we can do that. So this is our handle value change function that will be taking row index, column index at the value. So first of all, what we are going to do, we are going to do something like data, and we are not going to directly modify the grid. So yeah, so first let's do the shallow copy, and now what we can do, data at row index and at column index equals to value that we are getting, something like this. And finally what we can do is we can simply set grid with data. Okay, something like this. Cool. So we have also created 3 helper functions. We need to create one more helper function, but that we are going to do later. So now let's have a look at the HTML. So what we can do, we can simply create one div. Let's start with a div, and what we can do is let's have a look at the UI. We can think of it as some sort of table, we can say. So we can create some sort of table, like we can say like this is the tr, like a table row, table row, table row, and td td td. ठीक है, अगर आपको लगता है कि that you can create the same UI using some different HTML approach, तो वो भी fine है, ठीक है, but for now I will be using table. So let's proceed, because the same thing I think we can also like achieve using a grid as well, but I'm not very much comfortable with grid right now. So let's proceed with table only. So table, and over here let's have T body. Okay. So now what we need to do is, okay, so what we are going to do first, let's have a look at the UI again. ठीक है, so हम क्या करेंगे, सबसे पहले हमें क्या चाहिए, ये पर्टिकुलर रो चाहिए. ठीक है, so in order to render this row we are going to traverse the grid data. ठीक है, जो हमने बनाया array of array. This is our grid data. So we are simply running a loop over our grid data. Grid data dot map, and we got this row and row index. Now what we can do, we can create a row for this. TR, something like this. So now our first row is created. So our grid is of 2 cross 2. So our first row is created and we can give it a key, that is row index. Okay, something like this. ठीक है, तो अब इसको समझते हैं. हमने क्या करा, एक पूरी की पूरी रो बना दी. ठीक है, नाउ व्हाट वी नीड टू डू इज वी नीड टू क्रिएट टीडी. ठीक है, इसके अंदर का हमें क्या करना है, डेटा क्रिएट करना है. ठीक है, सो उसके लिए व्हाट वी कैन डू, वी नीड टू रन अनदर लूप दैट विल बी row dot map. Inside this we have, okay, कहाँ लिख रहा हूँ मैं, row dot map, and इसके अंदर we can say it like a particular cell and cell का index, and over here, yes, cool. ठीक है, so अब इसके अंदर what we are going to do, we are going to have the td. Let's give it a key, that is cell index, something like this. And so this is the td, and what is this actually, this is the input box. So let's create the input box. So input type equals to text and value equals to cell. So what we are doing over here, we are running a loop to our array of array, and when we are running a loop, so inside that array also we have this particular array. So that's why we are running another loop and we are simply targeting the cell inside it. Now what we can do, we have successfully given the value equals to cell. After this we need to give it the on change so that we can make it a control component. On change equals handle cell value change. And over here we need to pass the row index and column index. So row index is this one and cell index is this one. Cell index or column index, anything you can name it. And we also need to pass it value, that will be e dot target dot value, something like this. Cool. Now this much is done. Why it is not working, let's have a look at it. Grid data is not defined. Actually over here it's not grid data, it's grid. Cool. So as we can see, हमारे grid structure ready हो गया. ठीक है, let's try to write something like 1 2. Yeah, it's working. So after this, let's also create two buttons. Why we need two buttons? In order to add the rows and add the column. It's crying because it needs a parent element. So let's create the fragment for that. Cool. Okay, it's working, not working. Okay, add calls. So it will be add calls over here. Cool. So we got our grid as well. We got the buttons, and let's see if these buttons are working or not. So okay, add grid dot map is not a function. Let's see why it's trying. I think there is some error inside this only. We have set calls to states, set grid. Okay, okay. Let's have a look at the console, what we are getting. Okay, we are getting some sort of issue. Let's try to understand it. Actually we are passing okay, rows and column. Oh, actually cool. So what we are doing, actually we are doing set grid and rows plus one calls. So we are actually setting this grid directly. Actually we need to create the function. That function will return a data and that will be the value of our state, right? So we need to call create grid over here, something like this. And over here also we need to call create grid in order to set the state properly. Let's see now if it works or not. Cool. So friends, it's working properly now. Let's move ahead. Now we have achieved around like 70% of the problem statement. Now what we need to do is we need to achieve this particular thing, that is to execute this particular expression, and on blur it should give 3, something like that. So let's see how we can do the same. ठीक है, तो उसके लिए हमें क्या चाहिए, ऑन ब्लर चाहिए. So let's have a e over here. ठीक है. So friends, what I have done over here, let's understand it. We have simply added a check if event.target.value dot starts with equals to. ठीक है. So what we are going to do, we are going to calculate the formula. We are going to call this particular function that will take our event.target.value. और हमारा event.target.value क्या होगा, equals to 1 plus 2, this particular expression. और हम चेक कर रहे हैं कि ये तभी काम करे when our string is beginning with equals to sign. ठीक है. So once we got the once we got the result, ठीक है, then we are again what we are doing, we are calling handle cell value change again. ठीक है, हम उसमें रो इंडेक्स पास कर रहे हैं, कॉलम इंडेक्स पास कर रहे हैं, रिजल्ट पास कर रहे हैं. ठीक. So let's quickly write the calculate formula. Okay, so here it will take the formula that is basically an expression. ठीक है, तो पहले इसको समझते हैं लिखने से पहले. ठीक है, तो हमारे पास क्या है, इक्वल्स टू 1 + 2. सो दिस इज द फॉर्मूला दैट दिस फंक्शन विल रिसीव. ओके, एंड आफ्टर दिस व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू डू, फर्स्ट हम क्या करेंगे, इक्वल्स टू के बाद की पूरी जो स्ट्रिंग है वो लेंगे, दैट इज 1 + 2. सो वी कैन सिंपली अचीव इट यूजिंग सबस्ट्रिंग मेथड. आफ्टर दैट हम क्या करेंगे, वो जो हमारी स्ट्रिंग है वी आर गोइंग टू स्प्लिट इट. ठीक है, वी आर गोइंग टू स्प्लिट इट. वाई? बिकॉज इन द लॉन्ग रन यू नीड टू चेक कि ऑपरेशन कौन सा है, प्लस का है कि माइनस का है. ठीक है, एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट we can simply perform that particular operation. So now let's have a look at it. So first we need to have a look, first we need to get the numbers array. So how we can do that, simply have this formula, okay, and formula dot substring 1. Now what we can do is split using plus, and after that we can simply run a loop over here to okay, so over here we are going to get the num, and we can simply do like parse float, and over here if our string has like blank space, so we can just simply trim it out, and over here, or else just give it a default value, something like that. So cool. So after this, now with the help of this we are getting our array. And now what we need to do is, as I've told you earlier, that we are only going to focus on that plus add operation for this particular problem statement. Okay, but as a practice you can uh, extend the problem statement to perform different operations. You can make it more reusable. So numbers, so for that I will simply use numbers dot reduce to perform the sum. And it's that concept only, okay, accumulator and reducer wala concept. And over here 0. Okay, so we are going to get this, we are going to get the sum actually. ठीक है, जो हमें सम मिलेगा इस पर्टिकुलर फॉर्मूला से, वो कुछ नहीं करना हमें, वो सिंपली जाके उस दैट पर्टिकुलर ग्रिड की जो ये हमारा इनपुट बॉक्स है ना, उसमें जाके हमें स्टोर कर देना है. ठीक है, so it's something like that. So that's why what we are doing over here, we are simply calculating the formula. We are calling this calculate formula function, and it will give us a result. ठीक है, and वो particular result हम उस particular input box में set कर देंगे. ठीक है, so let's see if it is working or not. ठीक है, equals to 1 plus 2 on blur, substring is not a function. ठीक है, so I think it's small s. Let's see if it works or not. Column index is not a function. Column index is not defined. Where just give me अच्छा ठीक है. So over here we need to give it a cell index. So friends, now let's test our code. What we have done, let's see. 4 plus 6 equal to the sign, we got 10. Let's see for 9 plus 9, 18. So add row functionality also working, add column is also working. So one thing we just saw that when we click on add row, it like deletes the operation that was there. So yeah, that's a kind of improvement that we can do in this particular code, but it is working. If we have to check the basic implementation, then yes, it's working. Okay, so let's go through the same once again. So what we have done over here, we have simply created like two state, one for row, one for column and another one for grid. ठीक है, जिसके अंदर हम क्या कर रहे हैं, array of array create कर रहे हैं, right? And we are creating this over here. So this is a simple two loop concept with the help of which we are creating array of array. ठीक है. After this, these are the two functions to add the row and add the column, जिसके अंदर हम simply state set state का use कर रहे हैं. ठीक है. This is another function to handle the on change, in which we are simply doing the array at row at column equals to value. Then we are having this calculate formula, in which we are doing what, we are simply taking the formula, we are simply parsing it, okay, and after that we are simply calculating the sum. So this is only handling the plus operation for now, but you can modify it as per the need. Like you can modify so that it should be like reusable for plus, minus, multiply, divide, any operation. And over here we are simply running two loops. One is the outer loop and second one is the inner loop. ठीक है, basically what we are doing, this is the outer loop और इसके अंदर के जो like content है उनको access करने के लिए we are running a inner loop, and after that we are having this handle change and calculate formula function जो कि हम on blur पे call कर रहे हैं. We have two buttons for adding the rows and adding the columns. ठीक है. And friend, one small thing, अगर आपको मेरे साथ कनेक्ट करना है फॉर मॉक इंटरव्यूज या 1-to-1 इंटरव्यू टिप के लिए, ठीक है, तो आप इस पर्टिकुलर लिंक के थ्रू मेरे साथ कनेक्ट कर सकते हो. एंड फ्रेंड्स, इफ यू गॉट टू लर्न समथिंग न्यू फ्रॉम दिस वीडियो, देन प्लीज लाइक, शेयर, सब्सक्राइब. ठीक है, एंड कमेंट भी कर देना, इट मीन्स अ लॉट. तो थैंक यू फॉर वॉचिंग.